This is Daily Blast Live. We're talking about what you're talking about.
You all ready for this?
This is a sham.
No.
Nope.
Y'all, just stop.
Get real.
Welcome to DBL. Give yourself a pat on the back for being here. Thank you for being here, Harold Hill from The Music Man. Good to see you, or as welcome. I say, Al.
You're welcome.
And Jeff, 76 trombones. All right, there's all sorts of drama happening today in a Delaware court. It is all over Hunter Biden and his potential plea deal. We're going to paint this story so you guys can understand it. It can be confusing. This is Hunter. He arrived at court this morning. He agreed to a plea deal and agreed to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor charges that he, A, failed to pay taxes in 2017 and 2018. The plea deal will also allow him to avoid prosecution for a separate gun possession charge for illegally possessing a firearm as a drug user. Now, lots of people saying this is a sweetheart deal. He's getting off easy, especially because the deal may offer Hunter immunity from prosecution for other possible crimes. But it looks like the whole deal is falling apart, mostly because they are saying you can't prosecute him further on the gun charge. The lawyers are having issues with that. All of this is unfolding as we speak. What do we think about Biden, the plea deal? What do you think about him pleading guilty in the first place, Jeff?
So this is confusing, right? Especially with the information, that we're given today.
Right.
One side's given information, and where's the truth in all of this, right? So depending on where you get your information from, it's probably skewed in that direction. My take on this is totally impartial, right? And I'm thinking if Hunter Biden's setting up a deal where he can't be charged later on for anything, and there's all these bribery charges floating around between his dad and him and Ukraine and things like that, if you're saying I can't be charged anymore, this is the deal I'm going to get, if the two are not connected, that doesn't make sense. But if the two are connected and you're getting a deal and you're like, I'm going to plead guilty to the firearm and using drugs and things like that. And taxes, right? That is a sweetheart deal because then you aren't involved in future investigation.
Right.
That's the way I see it. My information might be wrong as well.
Right. And it's sort of unfolding as we speak.
Yes.
So it's okay to be flexible of thought here. I was like, hey, it's smart of him to plead guilty only because it cuts to the chase. There's no more news cycle when it gets to this. What do you think about the choice to do so?
I think it's part of what you just said. There's no more news cycle.
Right.
I mean, things are shaping up. We already have the discussion about was slavery bad? Now is the Holocaust bad? We have Trump facing his 3rd indictment. We have a lot of bad things coming for the Republican Party, and they need a narrative and something that they set up. And what has been set up is this Hunter Biden thing. It is going to be the distraction. It is going to be well, should we indict your president? Now, if you indict Biden, is the Trump indictment as bad? Hey, they just throw indictments around.
Right.
I think it's a way to muddy the waters. I'm not even mad at it. It's a political strategy, and right now the optics are not good. Rudy Giuliani has a coercion case coming up. Being disbarred. Everything is looking very bad right now, and they need something to kind of balance the media talking points, and I think this is an excellent way to do it. Just looking at the optics of who Hunter Biden is, I always wonder, Jeff, can you be two people? Can you be a person smoking crack and having what appears to be sex on camera with open prostitutes, but also be a cunning Pierce Brosnan-type spy that's coordinating deals with the Ukraine? If you are, that's a great duality of thought, but I haven't met anybody like that, and I've met everybody, so I don't know.
Well, speaking of the Biden family, actually, there's also been a lot of accusations against President Biden himself and his family. So first up, that his son Hunter used his influence with his father to enrich himself, and then there are also accusations of bribery. So now, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is saying now that these investigations into these claims are getting quite serious. Take a look at what the Speaker said.
We've only followed where the information has taken us. But Hannity, this is rising to the level of impeachment inquiry, which provides Congress the strongest power to get the rest of the knowledge and information needed.
So what do we all make of these accusations? Do you think there should be an impeachment inquiry, especially if things happen with President Biden and his son that happened before he was president? Do you think there should be an investigation into this, into an impeachment inquiry?
I don't know. Does that constitute impeachment? When I say, I have no dog in this fight, it's because I hate politics equally. But if something is unjust, make it right. If there is something going on that constitutes in the Constitution, and I don't know if it does or doesn't, that is like, hey, you could be up for impeachment because of this crime, no matter when it happened, then look into it, right?
Have an
Same as Donald Trump. Look into those things. If he can't run again, then don't run again. If there was coercion with Russia, which there wasn't, look into it. If there's nothing with Hunter Biden, look into it and let's close that book. There's too much going on, like Al said, on the left and the right. Is it a distraction? Are they trying to be just, or are they trying to use it as a political ruse, right? So that's where the normal people in America are like, I don't know what's going on, because if you watch one channel, they're biased and people won't say it. And if you watch another channel, they're also biased, even if people don't think they are. They are. Yeah. Where is the news? That's why podcasts are becoming so popular, because people are impartial and they're just saying, hey, this is what I think of this, and that's better to watch than these leaning influences on each side.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Jeff says is correct. It's annoying as a citizen to look and not understand what's going on. I mean, it looked, to your point, Jeff, it looks like they were trying to close the book on this Hunter Biden thing. This has been a narrative for 2, 3, 4 years now. And it was even getting to the point where a couple months ago, there were arguments on Fox News about people saying, well, where is this evidence? You've been teasing it. So if we're going to close the book, you would think that would happen today. If we're going to continue the investigation that appears to have bared no fruit thus far, that's what makes me think that maybe they're continuing it just to have some talking points out there, because it's been going on for at least 3 or 4 years.
And let's be clear, I will be honest, just to end
Remember the laptop from hell?
Like, right, where is the laptop? Where is that?
I don't know if that has anything to do with this case. I'm like, Jeff, I don't know. What is this?
It's all just kind of mishmash, laptop, all this stuff. I will say, if you look into it, and I have, he did overstep. There's a lot that he went to Burisma and overstepped.
Sure he did.
And he should have announced himself as a foreign agent. Does this lead to me to impeach the president at the point that doesn't have connection to that? Not as much. But I do think there's something there and should be investigated, as you said.
Little side note, too. Does the NRA want to set the precedent that you go to jail if you have a firearm and you also are addicted to drugs? Because I have a feeling that that's a Venn diagram that overlaps a lot more than they'd like.
Well said on that point. Well, let's speak about this. The Biden's family dog. He's in the dog house. See what we did there. It's been revealed that Commander, a 2-year-old German Shepherd, has
Looks like a sweetie.
Stop it. Has a biting problem. Let me read this before you and I get in a fight. He has bitten
Let me justify the biting problem.
No, I'm not going to justify it.
It looks like a guard.
Don't do that, because you've seen him in black and white photos, and so have I.
That's in color.
I'm saying German Shepherds have a bad rap for what? Let me continue. He has bitten several Secret Service agents, not good. One was even sent to the hospital after being bitten on the arm and the leg, and the White House has responded saying that it is a stressful environment for family pets and promised to get Commander additional training and leashing protocols. What do we think of all this?
A stressful environment. Where are we in America? This is nuts. This dog bit 7 people. If your neighbor's dog does that, it goes night-night. Okay, that's what happens. Stressful environment. Get out of here.
First of all,
politics and dog.
Let me state my point, and then you can come back at me. It'll take 1 sentence. Do I think Commander should leave the White House? Yes, I do, strongly. He is out of control and needs to be taken to a farm or someplace that is absolutely okay. Not that kind of farm.
Yeah, that kind of farm. Yes.
We call that a long drive to Delaware.
Delaware.
No, there is a place for this dog. It also gives German Shepherds a very bad look.
No, they've given themselves a bad name for decades of horrendous behavior.
Really, because they can train the whole guard.
Have you looked at history books? Anytime a protester's being bitten, somebody's being attacked, there's a German Shepherd nearby. I don't see any golden doodles. I don't see any peekadoodles or whatever
and
other
you know
kind of dogs there are.
Because German Shepherds were bred to
do you see that dog's face?
If they are bred and trained correctly.
Did you see that dog's face?
You can't get mad at the face.
All it's doing is looking at who to bite. It's like, look at that thigh.
They are being bred.
Can we pull up those pictures again and see if you've ever seen a dog?
That's like showing a mugshot of someone that looks bad instead of their real picture.
Yeah, it's got somebody in sights right there. Yeah, there he sees 2 people there.
My God, he doesn't see 2 people. Let me just say, German Shepherds are delightful dogs, and Al is a jerk.
Please pet me.
Okay, coming up on DBL. Congress holds an historic UFO hearing today. I wish you were on a UFO. Will we ever actually get to see any proof of aliens? Plus our very special interview. Oh, this was lovely with Steve Guttenberg. He really opens up about his family and tells us about this great play based on his memoir. Stay tuned.
DBL. This show is amazing.
There's a lot going on down here.
I would have been part of the Mile High Club.
Yeah.
So on point. But I'm going to have a conversation about what's happening now. Let me finish. Belgian Malinois and German Shepherds are known for police dogs, so they're easily trainable and they're very loyal. That does not mean they are inherently bad dogs. You cannot claim that.
Then why is it
because
just
they are
them? Why don't they take a number of different breeds?
Because they are particularly trained
Because
with
this
their back.
one is trained to seek and destroy.
No, look, BJ, the back of a German Shepherd's legs are like this. Can you see my knees? And you know why? Because they're ready to jump, and they're bred to have knees that are ready to jump. And you know what? They can be trained to be gentle, but they can also be trained with really good ears, snout. They are very aware. And if you watch a German Shepherd, oh my God, but they can also be family dogs and love your baby. So please stop listening to this. It's all in the training. And what was his name? What was his name?
Her name was Bella, and she was the sweetest dog ever. And she knew how to open up the fridge.
Yeah, to look for who to bite.
There's nobody in the fridge.
Yeah, they can open.
Nobody's in the fridge to bite.
Yeah, they're
literally open the
vicious
fridge to get-
dogs.
No, she was not vicious at all.
I have a
Show me
German
picture.
Shepherd.
We're getting too caught up in the weeds. Who cares what kind of dog it is? It bit 7
We agree
people.
on this.
Okay, it
We
doesn't
agree.
matter what kind of dog
He
it
doesn't
is.
need to go
I
night
love
night
how
night.
everyone really tries to argue that like German Shepherds or Pit Bulls are the sweetest dogs
They
in the
are.
world. No, they're not
They
the
are
sweetest
bred
dogs in the
to
world.
be attack
They're
dogs.
the dogs that attack people.
Because they were bred to do so to
Great.
protect farms.
So they're not
and
the
protect.
sweetest dogs.
They are if you train them correctly.
I know, that's true.
It's so annoying.
But
people think pit bulls are also
Pit
horrible.
Bulls are
dogs.
scary.
Oh my God.
They are scary.
They
They're
used to
scary
be.
looking.
They used to be nanny dogs back in 1800s. Just so you know, next to babies, pit bulls. Just so you know.
If you had a child, would you have a pit bull?
If it was trained correctly, yes.
Yeah.
We're fighting up here. What's new? Welcome back to DBL. There's a congressional hearing today all about UFOs, or as they're now being called, unidentified anomalous phenomena.
Rolls off the tongue.
Oh my God, that's way worse. So 3 whistleblowers are expected to testify about their first-hand knowledge about the mysterious flying objects, speaking of which, a former defense official went on News Nation with some shocking allegations about alien technology. Take a look.
The objective here, I think, and the opportunity is for the American people to come to better understand why it is that so many in Congress actually take seriously the idea that there are UFOs, UAP, that are violating U.S. airspace, and the associated rumor, allegation that we may have in our possession off-world technology recovered from someone else's space program.
So what do you make of all these claims? Is the government hiding the truth, or is this all just hearsay? I will say a lot of commanders and people in the Army, this is rather common to say that they have found or seen unidentified objects flying at speeds. David Grush said that there's an illegal UFO crash retrieval program operating within the classified world. Men in Black.
I just saw a UFR, an unidentified flying reporter. I didn't know Cuomo was back.
Yeah.
Good for him. Way to get back in the mix, buddy.
News Nation.
News Nation.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Good for him. I'm glad
So do
he's
you
back.
believe in the UFO, alien?
So the last conversation I said I was unbiased, talking about politics, right? I'm definitely biased on this one. I want it to be true so bad.
Why?
And I want to believe. I don't know. I just do. I just think, you know, the campfire talk, have a couple drinks, look up at the stars and say, man, there's got to be something else out there. There's got to be. And a lot of, like you said, a lot of people with high rankings in the military, even pilots, they see things that aren't on their radar. They see things moving at speeds that we don't have technology to move at. So there are some things that support it, but where is the real evidence? Where's the crash? Where is like the good footage? You know, where's the unblurry photo of Bigfoot? You know, like I want to see these things.
I don't think the American public cares, Jeff. They've kind of come out. There have been enough pilots that have come out and said, "I've seen something." And if, you know, 1 or 2 of them had come out, you would think the American public would be like, well, where are they? Everybody on the streets are talking about aliens, but they're not. I think if they came out and they said there are definitely aliens, and President Biden said, everybody like that's crazy, #aliens, and then something with Scandival would happen, And
I think you might be right. And remember,
I don't think anybody cares. No one ever talks about it.
How come when Orson Welles went on the radio and famously did a fake satire of War of the Worlds and said, the aliens have landed, they're coming, and there was an uproar, remember? People raced to their police stations and he had to go on and say it was fake. What happened? We just got used to the trickle information?
Well, people are a lot more discerning than they were in 1939.
Yeah.
So that's
more
why
outlets.
I would guess that that's it.
Cool suit.
What happened when you drive to work in a horse and carriage?
Yeah.
What happened to those days?
I think you're easily duped.
No, I just think it's interesting. Now, you're right. I think that we've just gotten more and more used to it because they've trickled it out. And I think
also the radio is their only source of information back then.
Right,
so they didn't have the idea
True.
that somebody would take that huge platform and twist their reality with that.
That's true. That's true. It's like a Black Mirror. Coming up on DBL, I, myself, have a heart-to-heart with actor Steve Guttenberg, all about being caregivers to the people we love. If you are in it, you don't want to miss it.
We got this picture sent to us by Barbara S. She says, I'm a business owner and received this letter from the U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Census Bureau. It says I am required by law to register, enter a code, and complete a survey. So is this legit? Let's verify. Our sources, the U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Census Bureau, and Tom Bartholomew, Charlotte's Better Business Bureau president. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the collection period for the 2023 annual business survey is now open.
They'll do the business census annually, but not every business is going to get this type of notification every year.
The Census Bureau says businesses are chosen for this survey, and those could include businesses that employ workers, partnerships, corporations, or sole proprietorships, with annual receipts of $1,000 or more.
It's a regular part of what the Census Bureau does with through the Department of Commerce to try to gauge business activity.
Bartholomew says there can be scammers trying to impersonate this survey. However, looking at this form, you can see that it lists a .gov website for people with questions, which suggests it's real. But the survey itself will only come by snail mail.
So if you get an email or a text saying that it's from the Census Bureau or saying that it's with the Department of Commerce with a link to go to that, no, that's not how they work.
Bartholomew also says this survey will not ask you for any personal information. So if you click on a link and you're asked for banking information or employee information, it's not legit. So we can verify that, yes, this survey is legit for businesses to fill out. With You Verify, I'm Megan Bragg.
Welcome back to DBL. Steven Guttenberg is not only a Hollywood legend, he has been one of my favorite stars since I can remember. You'll see just why in this interview, which I will never forget. Take a look.
What are you guys doing here? It's supposed to be me and Tori.
Oh my God! Stop! What? Did you unbutton your shirt for Tori today?
Well, I didn't know Tori was going to be here, but So anyway, Tori, let's just get rid of everybody else, and it's just you and me,
I
okay?
love it, Steve. You're the best. Go to the question. Okay. Go to the question. We love your movies. The beach. And now you're back sharing your life story in a play that I think sounds amazing, Tales from the Gutenberg Bible. Now, as a Jew, I have to ask a fellow Jew, how did a Jewish kid from Queens officially break into Hollywood?
Well, you know, it's not easy. You actually don't play the Jew card. That's actually
That's very true. That's very true.
It's actually a story about my family and about allowing me to leave home at 17 to go out to Hollywood. And truthfully, who would let their kid today at 17 go to Hollywood? I mean, that would be crazy. But it was a different time. I have great parents. I lost my dad last year.
Oh, so sorry.
Thanks. But thank you. But it's a story about family, about ambition, about innocence. It's about Hollywood, about all the different characters. It's very much like Tom Jones or Alice in Wonderland or Candide.
I'm amazing, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. I hope you like it.
Absolutely.
Tori, you're doing a good job.
Yeah, no, I was just
You're
saying
doing a
that
good job.
I'm dealing with my mom in dealing with several things that your dad, I know, also went through with kidneys and all that. And I just want to say, from caregiver to caregiver, I just thank you for for being there.
Yeah. Well, being a caregiver, I give you tons of props. And, there are 40 million caregivers in the United States alone. And that's basically more than 10% of our population.
Wow.
And everybody knows somebody who's taking care of someone they love. And it's a really important part of life that some people shirk that responsibility. But I think when it comes up, you have to stand up and take it, because your parents, your loved ones, they taught you how to eat with a spoon. So now you go help them do what they've got to do.
Amen.
Yep, that's exactly what's happening. Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
Tori,
you for that.
That was a moment. That was
I know. Beautiful. And you even became a dialysis tech to even
Tori, I'm not going to ask my question. Just talk.
Well, I just want to say, what made you want to go so deep into becoming a caregiver that you became a dialysis tech? I just wanted to let people know that is an extremely complicated thing to do that we're also having to deal with, maybe. I just wanted to ask you that.
Well, what happened was, with dialysis, you obviously have to drive the patient probably about 20 minutes, half hour to the dialysis center. Then you have to wait for a chair, because each center has about 20 chairs in a square, and there are lots of patients. So we heard that there's a small program in every state where civilians, like myself and my sister, are allowed to train to actually become dialysis technicians, and you can cannulate your loved one, which means you can insert the needles, watch the machine, their blood pressure, know what happens if there's a complication. So we actually went to school and learned. So instead of driving my dad, my sister and I, instead of driving my dad to the center, we were able to just create a hospital setting in the den. Still a very difficult process, but it was easier because he didn't want to have to travel. So it's something for you to think about and to look into, that you can get that training and do it at home.
Thank you for that. I will absolutely look into that. And just every second you had with your dad and every comfort he had at that, it must be a wonderful memory that you didn't have to spend in the car like that. I also follow you. I'm sorry I'm taking over this.
No, it's beautiful.
Okay,
it's a good moment.
I do follow you on Instagram, Steve, and social media can be really toxic. That is so not the case with you. I just watched you swimming in the ocean talking about it. How are you, and are you always this positive?
Well, I try to be positive, but no, I'm a flawed human being who has my moods. But I do know what is best, and I try to be my best as much as I can.
Steve, DBL Nation, guess what? If you're in the Sag Harbor area or you want to come, please go ahead and see Tales from the Gutenberg Bible, August 1st through the 27th at the Bay Street Theater. Visit baystreet.org for details. We thank you, Steve.
I'll never forget that interview. Thank you, Steve.
That was beautiful.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Skin cancer is the most common type of cancer in the United States. And it's also one of the most treatable when caught early. But there are some common misconceptions about skin cancer and skin tone that are putting people at risk. So let's clear them up. Claim 1. Having a darker skin tone protects you from getting skin cancer. All of our sources agree. It's a myth that people with darker skin tones are immune to developing skin cancer. People with darker skin have more melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color. And while that does provide some protection against the sun's harmful UV rays, it doesn't mean you can't get skin cancer. According to Dr. Corey Hartman, one of the most dangerous types of skin cancer, melanoma, begins in the melanocytes, which are cells that make melanin.
So when Black people, darker skinned people do get skin cancer, it tends to develop in those types of cells, and it tends to be more deadly.
So we can verify, no, having a darker skin tone does not protect you from getting skin cancer. Keck Medicine of USC says the misconception can be devastating because skin cancer in people of color is often diagnosed at later stages, when the disease may be more advanced and harder to treat. Claim 2. Skin cancer is harder to spot on darker skin tones. That's true. Medical News Today says cancerous growths are more noticeable on people with lighter skin tones because they tend to be a different color than their surrounding skin. But in individuals with darker skin tones, these growths may be the same color as their skin, making them harder to detect. And those cancerous growths might appear in unexpected places.
Darker skin has more melanin in concentrated areas, like around the nail beds, on moles on the palms and the soles. And those are areas that people don't necessarily think of to look for skin cancer.
So we can verify, yes, skin cancer is harder to spot on darker skin tones. The American Academy of Dermatology says that people of color and people with darker skin tones should check their skin from head to toe every month for signs of skin cancer. Look for dark spots, growths, or darker patches of skin that are growing, bleeding, or changing in any way. A sore that won't heal, or that heals and returns. Patches of skin that feel rough and dry, or a dark line underneath or around a fingernail or toenail. And no matter what your skin color, our sources say everybody needs to wear sunscreen every single day. With your Verify, I'm Ariande Till.
Verify here with your Fast Fact. There's a lot of money at stake in the upcoming lottery jackpot, and many of you emailed us asking, can you stay anonymous if you win? Our sources are the state lottery commissions, Powerball, and Mega Millions. Powerball and Mega Millions are played in nearly every state. They all require you to provide identifying information to claim your prize, but each state then makes its own rules about whether to release the winner's name to the public. If you win the Powerball or Mega Millions jackpot, these 17 states will keep your information private if you'd like. But that doesn't mean you're out of luck everywhere else. For example, Colorado only releases the winner's first name and the first initial of their last name. Other states, like Florida or Arkansas, wait a few months or years to reveal the winner's name. And some states have loopholes that allow you to claim through a trust or LLC, which lets you hide your real name. Some states also have exemptions for victims of stalking or domestic violence. With your Fast Fact, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Welcome back to DBL. Keeping joint pain at bay doesn't need to be a huge lifestyle change. There are some things you can add to your diet to reduce inflammation and keep things moving. It's time for some joint and muscle support brought to you by Omega XL. First up, fish, nuts, and seeds are a great source of omega-3s. Next, try adding in something new like tart cherries and purple carrots for fast joint recovery. And of course, green tea. It's rich in antioxidants and it can help against arthritis. Omega XL has improved the lives of millions of consumers, supported by 30 years of clinical research. Omega XL's powerful and proven benefits have transformed the lives of athletes, celebrities, and dedicated daily users. So call 1-800-607-7643 or visit omegaxl.com for more information. We got some comments on the Goots interview.
That was a great interview.
That was really great. Thank you for saying that. And
really
thank you all for giving me that time. That was very generous. Kimberly said, love this interview. And Stacy says, Steve seems like a great guy. Love the way he and Tori connected. And it's so funny, from being your crush to like being someone that I looked up to as a caregiver. What an
and then the universe connected and you guys just
full circle.
Al, I got some comments on how great we are too.
Yeah.
We don't have time for them.
No, he doesn't.